Hey everyone, Steven here. Today I will do a tutorial, if you will, or at least show how I mount my Cattleya Alliance orchids. This is an orchid that I have recently ordered from Carter and Holmes Orchid, and it is a cross between a Laelia and a LC, which is a Laelia Cattleya. Normally right now is kind of deep in the fall, almost winter time. It's not exactly a great time to repot orchids, but the reason why I am repotting is, as you can see, is it's kind of off center. So if the pot is wet and heavy, then it's fine, but once the water starts to evaporate, eventually the pot tips over if I don't have it in a tray. And I don't always have every kind of tray that fits every different kind of pot that vendors have. So that is why I am mounting this. And you know, I did speak to the owner of Carter and Holmes, and he also advised against mounting or repotting at this time, but it is for a reason. And you know, I personally just prefer to have my orchids on a mount, as you can see in all my other videos and pictures. So what do I need? Obviously, I recommend mounting them on a piece of cork like this. I actually bought a huge piece of cork that is solid down. This is approximately, I want to say 7 or 6 inches by 3.5, close to 4 inches. And I have pre-drilled a hole, and I put through this wire here. This is a 16 gauge wire that can hang up to 55 pounds or 25 kilograms. And honestly, if your orchid grows to 55 pounds, then you probably should start dividing it or mount it onto something else. So 55 pounds, I think this piece will do. And I've mounted many other orchids onto cork before, so they've all done wonderfully for me, and immediately their roots start growing. So this is what I will do. And I have already pre-made a tag because I actually index all my plants in the system. Everything is numbered, and I have a Chinese translation just for my own convenience. I will also include the original tag that will be mounted onto this. I have moss here already pre-soaked and ready to go. And lastly, what I recommend using for mounting, I know some people just, you know, you can go lazy and use a zip tie if you want. I tried several different fishing lines, and the World Pro fishing line at 50 pound, 12 pound diameter is 1.2 diameter is actually, or 12, sorry, diameter is what I recommend. It almost feels like there's a little bit metal. As you can see, I kind of bend it and then it kind of stays in that shape. And it is thick enough. It also is dark green. It kind of blends in with the media and the plant, so I love using it. So step one, let me just push all of this away. Step one, I will go ahead and take this out of its pot, and then I will dump them all into a tray that is already with some other media that I previously used to house some other orchids that I have just recently repotted. So I pull this out of the old pot. I will just toss this pot away, and in pretty much one swift motion. And ideally, you want to repot your orchid once every at least other year. You could wait a little bit longer or even sooner if you like to. The bad thing about repotting it too soon or too often is that you actually lose some of the beneficial bacteria in the medium. I also like to peel this off just for the look, aesthetics. You don't have to, but I personally like to do this. You could repot sooner, but also, like I was saying, that you lose some of the beneficial bacteria. But you also don't want to wait too long. By waiting too long, your potting medium begins to rot and degenerate, and what it does is actually release not toxin, but release acid, and it will kill your root. So you want to clean it up and repot it with fresh medium if you can. And since I'm mounting it, I don't really need more medium. I just need to place this onto the mount that I plan to use. So more or less like this. So I'm looking at this, I noticed that new shoots are coming off the back. So I tend to like to, instead of mounting it this way with new shoots in the front, I like to mount it in the back, because that means the new shoot is gonna grow upwards into this wood, and also the root will come out from the new shoot, will start crawling and attaching to the board right away. One disadvantage of mounting it this way with the new shoot facing away is that you're going to start creeping away, and eventually the whole thing is just going to lose balance and start leaning forward. So that is why I prefer to have the new shoot kind of going snug up to the wood when I mount. And as I mount, I usually try to let the root having a little bit more breathing room. Don't worry, they'll be just fine when exposed to the air, especially if you have a greenhouse like myself where it's humid enough. So now, next thing I will do is to place some of this moss just gently and evenly across the root surface so that it retains some moisture. You know, I don't really need to have too much. And for some plants, actually a lot of my plants, I also put a small clump of Spanish moss onto it, just living Spanish moss, really more for the aesthetic, but also it does retain the moisture a little bit. Some additional living, breathing moss is always welcome on your plant. Okay, so now that I have the moss covering the orchid root area pretty well, next thing I will do is then with my fishing line, I will make a loop. I will tie it around the wood once I have made that loop. So I'm trying to tie this thing around real quick. You don't have to make any fancy sailors or naval ties. It's just a whatever tie that secures for the time being, because as you weave it around, it will eventually be tightened up and catch the texture of the wood or the bark, if you will. Okay, so here's the cork bark. I'm going to start from the bottom and let me go ahead and weave it upwards towards the top of the root. So all I do is start making circles and just make sure I capture the root as I'm going through this motion. And as I approach the top, I will actually weave the fishing line through the middle a little bit to secure some of the pseudobulbs towards the back, like this, kind of like this. So a bit more, just a few more loops, and just want to make sure I have enough lines to secure all the moss here. Secure it very well. So once I feel I have enough, then I will just go ahead and snip it with any kind of scissors you have. I find the bonsai scissors actually work the best for me, so I've been using bonsai scissors, very multi-purpose. And in the back, I just kind of weave it through the line here, and again, make a knot, nothing fancy, just as long as it secures, because the texture of this fishing line kind of captures itself, so it's pretty secure. You don't really have to worry about the line deteriorating or slipping around. It actually, this, if you purchase this fishing line, it serves a very good purpose. So at this point, the mount is basically complete, but I want to make sure I include the tag for the plant. You always want to save the original tag that you get from the vendor, any kind of vendor. And then the next thing I do is I will weave my own tag that has the number of this plant in my system in the back. So it'll be hanging in the back. And then last step, I am just going to bend this over so that it turns into a hook. And then I can just hang it wherever I prefer. So there you have it. This is the whole mounting process. Get the plant out of its tray or out of its pot, clean off the media, put it onto the cork, or if you choose, you can also use a tree fern, which I have plenty of, also highly recommended media, and then pad it with some moist but not drenching moss, and then start tying it with fishing line, knot it, and then make sure you include the label, and then here we go. So this is my newly mounted Laelia, and I look forward to see it thrive. Thank you for tuning in today. I'll see you soon.